The worst mistake of my life started with 5 words I wasn't supposed to hear. I was standing in a garden, trying to escape a crowded party, when a woman's voice cut through the darkness. "I wish you were mine." My stomach dropped. I knew that voice. It belonged to Victoria, my best friend's mom. Let me explain how I got there, because this whole mess started innocent enough. Derek and I became friends back in 8th grade when he moved to town. His dad Philip worked in investment banking, the kind of guy who wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent. His mom Victoria was always kind to me, asking about school and remembering little details about my life. Over the years, I practically lived at their house. We'd play video games in Derek's room, and Victoria would bring us snacks without us even asking. She remembered I hated pickles on my sandwiches. She knew I loved her homemade chocolate chip cookies. Small things like that made me feel like part of their family. Fast forward to last spring. Derek got his acceptance letter to Stanford Law School. His parents went crazy with excitement. Philip immediately started planning this huge party at their estate in Westchester. When Derek told me about it, he rolled his eyes. "My dad's inviting everyone he's ever done business with. It's going to be so boring." He wasn't wrong. The party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in May. I showed up around 7 wearing the nicest clothes I owned. A blue blazer my mom bought me for job interviews and black pants I'd worn to 3 weddings. I brought a card with $200 inside, which was basically all my savings, but Derek was my best friend. He deserved it. The estate looked like something from a movie. White tents covered the back lawn. A jazz band played near the pool. Waiters in bow ties carried trays of fancy food I couldn't pronounce. There had to be at least 100 people there, maybe more. I found Derek near the main tent, surrounded by relatives I'd never met. He waved me over and started introducing me to everyone. His aunt from Boston, his cousin who worked in tech, some professor from his college. Everyone asked the same questions. "What do you do for work? Where did you go to school? What are your plans?" I explained over and over that I did freelance graphic design and branding for small businesses. Most people nodded politely and then found someone more interesting to talk to. After about an hour, my brain felt tired from all the small talk. I needed a break from the noise and fake smiles. I grabbed a soda from a cooler and walked away from the party, heading toward the quieter part of the property. That's when I found the garden pavilion. It sat at the edge of their land, surrounded by hedges and flower beds. String lights hung overhead, creating a soft glow. It was peaceful there, away from the jazz music and loud conversations. I sat on a stone bench and pulled out my phone, scrolling through nothing in particular. That's when I heard footsteps on the gravel path. Then her voice, quiet and sad, like she was talking to herself. "I wish you were mine." I froze completely. My first thought was that I shouldn't be hearing this. My second thought was trying to figure out where the voice came from. I stood up slowly and walked around the hedge. Victoria stood about 10 feet away holding a wine glass. She wore a dark red dress that looked expensive. Her hair was pulled back in some complicated style, but her face looked wrong. Not wrong like something bad happened, but wrong like she wasn't really there. Like her body was at the party, but her mind was somewhere far away. She didn't notice me at first. I cleared my throat, not wanting to scare her. She jumped anyway, spinning around to face me. For a second, her expression was completely open, showing whatever pain she'd been hiding. Then it was gone, replaced by a polite smile. "Marcus," she said, her voice now steady and controlled. "I didn't know anyone else was out here. I needed some air," I told her honestly. "The party's pretty intense." She laughed, but it didn't sound happy. "Yes, it certainly is." Something about the way she said it made me stay instead of making an excuse to leave. I moved a bit closer, keeping enough distance to be respectful. "Are you okay?" I asked. Victoria looked at me for a long moment, like she was deciding something important. Then she took a sip of wine and spoke quietly. "Do you know what it feels like to have everything you're supposed to want, but still feel completely empty inside?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I shook my head. "Not really, but I'm listening if you want to talk about it." She studied my face, searching for something. Whatever she found must have been enough because she started talking. I've been married to Philip for 28 years. We live in this beautiful house. We have a wonderful son. Philip's business is successful. From the outside, everything looks perfect. She paused, staring at her wine glass. But we barely talk anymore. When we do, it's about schedules or money or who needs to pick up the dry cleaning. We haven't had a real conversation in years. Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't know what to say, so I just waited. I used to be an architect, Victoria continued. Before I married Philip, I worked for a design firm in Manhattan. I loved creating spaces that made people feel something. But when Philip's career took off, everyone said I should quit. Support his work. Raise Derek properly. Be the perfect wife for his business dinners and social events. So you gave it up? I asked. I gave it up, she repeated, and the pain in her voice was clear now. And somewhere along the way, I gave up everything else too. My dreams, my identity, everything that made me who I was. Now I'm just Philip's wife, Derek's mother, the woman who hosts parties and sits on charity boards. She turned to look directly at me. Earlier, when I was standing here alone, I heard you on the phone with someone. You sounded so happy for them about their good news. There was real warmth in your voice, real care. I can't remember the last time anyone spoke to me that way, like I actually mattered as a person. My heart started beating faster. I didn't know what to say to that. You do matter, Victoria. Do I? She asked. Because most days I feel invisible. Philip looks through me, not at me. He's always on his phone or in meetings. Even tonight, at our son's celebration, he spent 30 minutes talking business with investors instead of actually being present. I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. Without thinking too much about it, I reached out and steadied them with my own. She looked down at where we were touching and didn't pull away. When I said I wish you were mine, she said quietly, I meant that I wish I had someone who looked at me the way you look at the people you care about. Someone who listened. Someone who saw me as Victoria, not just as some role I'm supposed to fill. The garden felt very quiet suddenly. The party noise seemed far away. That makes perfect sense, I told her. We stood there as darkness settled around us, our hands still touching. Victoria had tears forming in her eyes. I'm sorry, she said, pulling back and wiping her face. I shouldn't be telling you all this. You're Derek's friend. This isn't appropriate. Maybe it's not appropriate, I agreed. But it sounds like you needed to say it to someone. I'm glad you felt like you could say it to me. She gave me a small smile, a real one this time. You're a good person, Marcus. Derek is lucky to have you as a friend. Something made me speak up then. It's not too late for you to choose something different, to want more than just looking perfect while feeling empty inside. You're what, 48? 49? You could have another whole lifetime ahead of you. Her breath caught. I'm 49, and I've thought about that exact thing so many times. But leaving would mean upsetting everything. Derek would be hurt. Philip's family would judge me. All our friends would take sides. Maybe it's not about leaving right away, I suggested. Maybe it's about starting to remember who Victoria actually is, what she wants, what makes her feel alive. You could start small. Like what? She asked. Like going back to architecture work, even just volunteering or consulting, finding that part of yourself again. Victoria looked at me with something like hope mixed with fear. I wouldn't even know where to start. Start by making one phone call tomorrow, I said, to an architecture center, a museum, anywhere that needs someone who understands design. Tell them you want to help. See what happens. She was quiet for a minute, thinking. Then she nodded slowly. Maybe I will. We heard Derek's voice calling my name from somewhere near the house. Victoria straightened up, and I watched her put on what I now recognized as a mask. The polite smile, the perfect posture, all of it designed to hide what she really felt. We should get back, she said, before people wonder where we went. Victoria, I said as she started walking away. She turned back. You're not invisible to me. Her eyes filled with tears again, but she smiled and walked toward the party without saying anything else. I stayed in the garden for a few more minutes, trying to understand what just happened. Something had shifted between us. Something I couldn't name but could definitely feel. For days later, my phone buzzed while I was working on a logo design for a coffee shop. The message was from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi Marcus, this is Victoria. I hope it's okay that I got your number from Derek's phone. Would you be willing to meet for coffee sometime this week? There's something I'd like to talk about." I stared at the screen for probably 5 full minutes. My brain kept going back to that conversation in the garden. The way she'd looked at me, the way I'd felt standing there with her. This was a terrible idea. I knew it was a terrible idea, but I texted back anyway. "Sure. When works for you?" We agreed to meet Thursday morning at a place called the Daily Grind on the other side of town. When I arrived, Victoria was already sitting at a corner table. She looked different than at the party. She wore jeans and a casual sweater. Her hair was down, not styled. She looked younger somehow, more relaxed. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. "I wasn't sure if you would." "Of course I came," I replied. "What did you want to talk about?" Victoria wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "I took your advice. The day after the party, I called the Metropolitan Architecture Collective downtown. They have this program where volunteers help plan exhibits and community spaces. I told them about my background and they got excited. They asked me to come in for an interview." "That's amazing," I said, genuinely happy for her. "When's the interview?" "I already had it," she said, and her whole face lit up. "Yesterday afternoon. They offered me a volunteer position helping organize their next showcase on urban residential design. It's not paid, but I don't care. I just want to do architecture work again." We talked for over an hour that morning. She told me about her life before Philip, about working at the design firm and feeling like she was building something meaningful. I told her about my struggles as a freelance designer, about clients who didn't pay on time and projects that fell through. We both loved the same design blogs. We had strong opinions about whether buildings should be simple or complex. "You know what's strange?" Victoria said as we were getting ready to leave. "I feel more like myself talking to you for an hour than I have in years around Philip." "Maybe that says something important," I suggested carefully. She nodded but didn't say anything else. As we walked to our cars, she turned to me. "Can we do this again? Meet for coffee? It's nice having someone to talk about design with." "Definitely," I said. After that, we started meeting twice a week. Always at different cafes where nobody from her world would see us. She'd tell me about the showcase and ask my opinion on how to arrange furniture or what colors to use. I'd show her website designs I was working on, and she'd give me feedback on how users might move through the pages. Our conversations felt easy, like we'd known each other forever instead of just a few weeks. One morning in early June, Victoria showed up looking upset. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately. "The Architecture Collective wants to create this lounge area for the showcase, but they're having trouble figuring out how to arrange everything, so it feels welcoming but not crowded. I spent 3 hours yesterday moving furniture around and nothing felt right." "Want me to take a look?" I offered. "Sometimes fresh eyes help." Her eyes got wide. "Would you? I don't want to take up your time, but I could really use help." That afternoon, I met Victoria at the Collective's building. The space was beautiful but tricky, with weird angles and lots of windows that created harsh shadows in some spots. We spent 4 hours moving couches and chairs, adjusting lights, arguing about whether the reading area should face the windows or the art wall. Working with her felt natural. She'd suggest something and I'd build on her idea. I'd point out a problem and she'd immediately think of solutions. We moved well together, like we could read each other's minds. "Try angling that chair 15 degrees to the left," Victoria called out while I was positioning furniture. I shifted it and suddenly the whole arrangement clicked into place. "That's it. That's exactly right." She walked over to stand beside me, both of us looking at what we'd created together. "We make a good team," she said quietly. "Yeah," I agreed. "We really do." Victoria turned to look at me, and I realized how close we were standing. Close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and light. Her eyes met mine and held for a moment too long. "Marcus," she started, then stopped. "What?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, stepping back quickly. "I should probably get home. Philip will wonder where I've been all afternoon." Over the next few weeks, I helped Victoria with the showcase whenever she needed extra hands. We'd meet early in the morning before the collective opened to visitors, working in comfortable silence or talking about design ideas and personal stories. She told me about Derek as a kid, about being scared when he was born that she wouldn't be a good mother. I told her about losing my dad when I was 17 and having to figure out manhood without his guidance. "You turned out well," Victoria said one morning while we were hanging lights. "You think so?" I asked. "I know so," she said firmly. "You're kind, talented, thoughtful. Any parent would be proud of you." The way she said it made my chest feel warm. I'd spent years feeling like I was barely keeping things together, trying to build a career and be someone my dad would have respected. Hearing Victoria say that meant more than she probably knew. One afternoon in mid-July, Victoria called me sounding panicked. "The showcase opening is Friday night and the main installation isn't working. The architect we hired backed out yesterday because of an emergency. We need something stunning for the center of the room or the whole thing will feel empty." "What kind of piece were you planning?" I asked. "Something that shows the connection between traditional and modern design. Something that makes people stop and really look. But I don't know where to find someone who can create it in 3 days." An idea hit me. What if I design something? A digital installation. I could project moving images onto fabric panels, create this blend of old architectural patterns with modern digital animation. It could shift between traditional and contemporary throughout the night. Victoria went quiet for a moment. "Could you really do that by Friday?" "I can try," I said. I spent the next 3 days barely sleeping, designing and programming an installation that combined historical architecture patterns with flowing digital animations. Victoria came by my apartment twice to check on progress, bringing coffee and food and sitting quietly while I worked. Having her there made me push harder, wanting to create something that would make her proud. Friday evening arrived. Guests started filling the collective for the showcase opening. My installation projected onto 6 fabric panels hanging from the ceiling, slowly changing between detailed traditional patterns and smooth modern designs. People kept stopping to stare, taking photos and asking Victoria about the artist. I stood in the back watching Victoria move through the crowd, explaining design choices and introducing architects. She was glowing, completely alive in a way I'd never seen before. This was who she was supposed to be, not someone standing in the background at business dinners. Around 8 o'clock, Philip showed up. I recognized his tall frame and expensive suit immediately. He walked through the showcase quickly, stopping occasionally to shake hands with people he knew from business. He looked at his phone more than he looked at the actual designs. Victoria saw him and walked over, her smile fading slightly. They talked for maybe 2 minutes before Philip kissed her cheek without really looking at her and headed for the door. He'd been there less than 20 minutes. At his wife's biggest achievement in years, he couldn't spare more than 20 minutes. I found Victoria sitting on a bench in the corner about half an hour later. Her eyes were red and she was staring at the floor. "Hey," I said softly, sitting beside her. "The showcase is incredible. Everyone loves it." "Philip didn't even ask me which pieces I chose," she said, her voice shaking. "He showed up because his business partners are here and it looks good for his image. He spent the whole time networking instead of actually seeing anything I created. Then he left for a conference call. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't sound empty. Sometimes words don't make things better. I've known for a long time that our marriage is basically over," Victoria continued. "We're roommates who share a last name and a house. But seeing it so clearly tonight hurt worse than I expected. Realizing that he doesn't actually care about me or what matters to me. I'm just part of his image. The successful businessman with the elegant wife." She turned to look at me with tears on her face. "Why doesn't he see me? Why am I not enough to make him want to actually be present?" "It's not about you not being enough," I said firmly. "It's about him being too focused on himself to see what he has. You're brilliant and creative and passionate. That's not your flaw. That's his failure. Victoria leaned against my shoulder and I put my arm around her without thinking about whether it was appropriate. She needed comfort and I wanted to give it to her. We sat like that while the gallery slowly emptied around us, just two people holding each other in a room full of beautiful things. "Marcus," she whispered. "Yeah. I need to tell you something and I'm scared to say it out loud." My heart started pounding. "What is it?" She lifted her head and looked directly into my eyes. "I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between us like something fragile that might break if either of us moved too fast. Victoria had just told me she was falling in love with me and I couldn't breathe properly. "You can't say that," I finally managed to get out. "I know," she whispered, "but it's true and I'm tired of pretending it's not." I should have stood up and walked away right then. Victoria was married. She was Derek's mother. She was 23 years older than me. Every logical part of my brain was screaming that this was wrong. But my heart was saying something completely different. "I'm falling for you too," I admitted. "I've been trying not to, but I am." Victoria's hand came up to touch my face, her fingers gentle against my cheek. "What are we going to do?" "I don't know," I said honestly. She leaned forward slowly, giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. I didn't want to. When her lips touched mine, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. The kiss was soft and careful, like we were both afraid of what it meant. When we pulled apart, Victoria was crying again. "This is impossible," she said. "You know that, right?" "Probably," I agreed. "But that doesn't make it less real." 2 weeks after that kiss, Derek walked into the coffee shop where I was working and my whole world stopped. I looked up from my laptop and there he was, my best friend since 8th grade, sliding into the chair across from me with a smile that made my stomach drop. "Hey man," he said casually. "Haven't seen you much lately. You've been like a ghost." "Yeah, I've been swamped with projects," I lied, closing my laptop so he couldn't see my shaking hands. We talked about his preparation for Stanford, about mutual friends, about normal stuff that felt anything but normal. Then Derek leaned forward with this look on his face I couldn't read. "Can I ask you something weird?" he said. "Sure," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you noticed my mom acting strange lately?" My heart started racing so fast I thought he could hear it. "Strange how?" Derek stirred his coffee slowly, like he was thinking carefully about his words. "She's never home anymore. Always at the architecture collective or meeting with people about starting some consulting business. She dresses different too, younger somehow. And she's on her phone constantly, smiling at messages she won't show anyone. Maybe she's just happy doing work she enjoys again," I suggested carefully. "Maybe," Derek said, but he didn't sound convinced. "But there's something else. Yesterday I needed to use her laptop because mine was updating. When I opened it, there was a message notification from some app I've never heard of. Before I could even look at it, she ran across the room and slammed the laptop shut, like she was panicking. I took a sip of my coffee to buy time, even though my throat felt tight. "What are you saying?" "I think she might be seeing someone," Derek said quietly. "I know it sounds crazy, but she's acting exactly like someone who's in a new relationship. The phone smiling, the distraction, the secrets. And it's definitely not with my dad. They barely even look at each other anymore." I asked, trying not to sound angry. "I don't know," she said desperately. "A few weeks, maybe a month. I need to talk to Philip first about separation before everything explodes publicly. There's so much to sort out with the house and finances and his business connections." The word separation hit me hard. She was actually thinking about leaving her marriage. Really leaving. "You're serious about this?" I asked. "About leaving Philip?" "I think so," she whispered. "I can't keep living like this, pretending to be happy in a marriage that died years ago. But it's complicated. There's property and investments and Philip's reputation. I need to be smart about how I handle everything." Frustration built inside me like pressure in a bottle. "So what? We just keep sneaking around while you sort out details." "Please don't be angry," she said, reaching for my hand. "This isn't easy for me either." "I'm not angry," I said, which was a lie. I just wish things were different. We sat quietly for a while, watching joggers pass by and kids play on the grass. The world kept moving around us like nothing was wrong. Finally, Victoria spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we should take a break, just until I can figure things out with Philip. It would be easier if we weren't complicating everything. The words felt like a punch to my chest, knocking all the air out of my lungs. You want to end this? Not end it, she said quickly. Just pause it. Please understand. This involves so many people and I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. I stood up, hurt and anger mixing together into something I couldn't control. Fine, take your time. But don't expect me to just wait around forever while you decide if I'm worth the risk. That's not fair, Victoria said, standing too. Nothing about this is fair, I shot back. I've already dealt with weird looks from people who somehow heard rumors about us. I lost a potential client last week because someone told them I was involved with a married woman. I've handled all of that because I love you and I thought you loved me too. I do love you, she said, crying harder now. Then why does it feel like you're choosing everyone else over me? I asked. She didn't have an answer for that. I walked away from that bench and didn't look back, even though everything in me wanted to turn around. For 3 weeks, Victoria and I didn't communicate at all. Every single day my phone stayed silent. Every single day it hurt a little more. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and staying up late designing websites until my eyes burned and my back ached. Anything to avoid thinking about her. My younger brother Tyler called one evening. You sound awful, he said immediately. What happened? It's over, I told him. Or paused. I don't even know anymore. The older woman you mentioned last month? He asked. Yeah. Tyler was quiet for a moment on the other end of the line. Do you love her? Ido. Does she love you? She says she does. But she's scared of what people will think. She's married and there are complications with her family and social circle. Look, Tyler said carefully, choosing his words like he was walking through a minefield. I get that you love her, but you can't force someone to choose you. You can only decide how long you're willing to wait while they figure things out. I know, I said, staring at my ceiling. But when something feels this right, how do you just walk away? I don't have an answer for that, Tyler admitted. I just know you deserve someone who picks you without having to think about it for weeks. After we hung up, I sat on my couch staring at my blank phone screen. Part of me wanted to text Victoria to check if she was okay. But the bigger part was too hurt and angry. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon 3 weeks after our fight, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Hello? This is Sarah Chun from the Urban Arts Initiative. A woman's voice said. Victoria Mitchell gave me your name. She said you might be interested in helping design a community garden and gallery space we're planning in the Riverside neighborhood. Victoria had recommended me for a project. Even while we weren't speaking, she was thinking about me and trying to help my career. I'd be very interested, I told Sarah, my voice catching slightly. We set up a meeting for Thursday afternoon at their office downtown. Sarah explained they wanted to create an outdoor gallery space in a neighborhood that didn't have much access to art or green areas. The budget was tight, but the mission mattered. They wanted to prove that beautiful public spaces could exist anywhere, not just in wealthy neighborhoods. As I was leaving the meeting, Sarah mentioned something that made me stop walking. Victoria's consulting firm is actually our biggest donor for this project. She's really passionate about making art accessible to everyone, not just people who can afford museum memberships. She personally funded about 40% of our budget. Over the next week, I worked on design concepts for the garden gallery. Every choice I made, I imagined explaining it to Victoria and hearing her thoughts. Her voice was still in my head, guiding my decisions even though we weren't talking. I was presenting my initial ideas to Sarah and 2 other board members when the conference room door opened. Victoria walked in and froze when she saw me sitting there. I stopped talking mid-sentence, my mouth hanging open stupidly. Sarah looked between us, clearly sensing the tension in the room. You 2 know each other, right? Victoria suggested we contact you. We've met, Victoria said quietly, taking a seat as far from me as possible at the long table. I finished my presentation, painfully aware of her watching. She kept her eyes on the design boards, not looking at me directly. My hands shook slightly as I pointed out different features. When I finished, Sarah turned to Victoria. "What do you think of the concepts?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment, studying the boards. Then she said something that cut right through me. "The designs are good, safe and functional, but they're not what he's really capable of." She finally looked at me, her eyes meeting mine for the first time in weeks. "I've seen his other work and this isn't it. He can create something that actually transforms how people experience both art and nature together, not just put them next to each other. These designs are holding back." Her words stung because they were completely true. I had been playing it safe, afraid to put real emotion into the work because I was too hurt and distracted. After the meeting ended, I caught Victoria in the hallway before she could escape. "Can we talk?" I asked. "Not here," she said, glancing around nervously at people passing by. "Please, just 5 minutes." She sighed and led me to an empty stairwell that smelled like cleaning products. We stood on different steps, the space between us feeling massive. "You were right about the designs," I started. "I didn't mean to embarrass you in there," Victoria interrupted. "I just know what you're capable of, and that wasn't it." "I know," I said, "and you're right. I've been holding back because I'm hurt and angry and I can't focus." Victoria looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring around her finger. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." "What?" I asked, bracing myself. "I asked Philip for a separation." My brain needed a second to process what she just said. Victoria had asked Philip for a separation. She actually did it. "When?" I managed to get out, my voice coming out rough. "Last week," Victoria said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I told him I haven't been happy for years, that we've been living like roommates who share a house but not a life, that I can't keep pretending everything is fine when it's not." "What did he say?" I asked, gripping the stairwell railing. Victoria let out a bitter laugh that echoed in the empty space. "He wasn't surprised at all. He told me he's been seeing someone in London for the past 5 years. A woman he met through his real estate business. He seemed almost relieved when I brought up separation first, like I saved him from having to start the conversation himself. I didn't know what to say to that. 5 years. Philip had been lying for 5 years. Victoria stepped closer to me on the stairs, close enough that I could see the dark circles under her eyes. "I'm not free yet," she continued, her words coming fast now. "This will take months to sort out properly. Dividing assets, dealing with lawyers, figuring out how to tell Derek without destroying him. But I wanted you to know that I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to be honest about who I am and what I want. And part of what I want is you." Before I could respond, her phone started ringing loudly in her purse. She looked at the screen and her whole face went white, like she'd seen something terrible. "It's Derek," she said, panic clear in her voice. "He never calls during work hours." She answered with a shaky hello, and I watched her expression shift from nervous to absolutely devastated in about 5 seconds. "Yes, I'm still at the initiative building," she said, her voice barely steady. She looked at me with pure fear in her eyes. "I'll be right down." She hung up and just stared at me, not moving. "Derek's in the parking lot," she whispered. "He saw us walk into the stairwell together. He knows something's happening between us." For 5 days, Victoria and I didn't speak at all. She sent me one text saying she needed time to deal with Derek and I needed to give her space. I focused entirely on redesigning the gallery project, pouring all my confusion and hurt into creating something meaningful. Every line I drew, every space I planned, I thought about what Victoria would say. I stopped playing it safe and started designing something that actually mattered. Then on the 6th night around 11 o'clock, someone knocked on my apartment door hard enough to wake my neighbors. I opened it and found Victoria standing there in sweatpants and an old jacket. Her eyes were swollen from crying and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't be alone right now." I pulled her inside without saying anything and wrapped my arms around her. She collapsed against my chest and cried so hard her whole body shook. We stood like that for a long time, me just holding her while she let everything out. People walked past my door in the hallway and I didn't care. Finally she pulled back and wiped her face with her sleeve. "Derek won't talk to me," she said, her voice raw. "He found out about us and now he acts like I don't exist. He returns all my calls with silence. When I went to his apartment yesterday, he wouldn't even open the door. I could hear him inside, but he just ignored me." "I'm so sorry," I said, feeling the weight of responsibility crush down on me. "He sent me one text," Victoria continued, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. "It said that he can't believe I would do this to our family. That I'm selfish and disgusting for getting involved with his friend. That I've ruined everything he thought he knew about me." She started crying again, harder this time. I guided her to the couch and we sat down together. "This is my fault," I said. "I should have stayed away from you from the beginning." "No," Victoria said firmly, looking up at me with red eyes. "This isn't your fault. I made my own choices. I chose to meet you for coffee. I chose to spend time with you. I chose to fall in love with you. Those were my decisions and mine alone." We fell asleep on that couch with her head on my chest and my arms holding her tight. When light started coming through the windows hours later, Victoria stirred awake. "I should probably go," she said quietly, not moving. "Stay," I told her. "Just for a little while longer." She looked up at me with tired eyes. "This is going to get worse before it gets better, isn't it?" "Probably," I admitted, being honest. "Are you sure you want to deal with all of this? The judgment, the gossip, Derek being angry at both of us. I've spent 28 years being who everyone else needed me to be," she said, her voice stronger now. "Became a kind of statement, proof that we could create something beautiful together despite everyone telling us we were wrong." One evening in late January, I was adjusting the final lighting fixtures when Victoria called me over to look at the completed space. "Look at what we built," she said, gesturing around with pride in her voice. "Garden beds with winter plants. Art installations that catch the light perfectly. Seating areas where people can rest and think. We created something real here, something that actually matters to people." "We did," I agreed, looking at everything we'd accomplished. She turned to face me, her expression serious. "Whatever happens next, I want you to know that I don't regret any of this. Not meeting you, not falling for you, not choosing to be with you. Even if Derek never speaks to me again. Even if Philip's lawyers make things difficult. Even if everyone in our social circles judges us forever. I don't regret choosing you." I kissed her then, right there in the gallery we built together with our own hands. When we pulled apart, she was smiling through tears. 2 weeks later, the gallery had its official opening on a Saturday afternoon. The Riverside neighborhood turned out in force. Families and kids and elderly residents all walking through the space we created. They took photos with the art installations. They sat on the benches and talked about how nice it was to have beauty in their neighborhood. Kids ran around on the grass laughing. I was standing near the entrance watching people enjoy what we built when I saw someone I recognized. Derek stood near the back of the crowd, looking at everything with an expression I couldn't quite read. My stomach dropped like I was falling. I found Victoria and touched her arm gently. "Derek's here," I said quietly. She turned around fast and I saw hope and fear mix on her face in equal parts. She started walking toward him slowly, but he held up his hand, stopping her from getting too close. They talked for what felt like forever but was probably only 10 minutes. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I saw Victoria crying and Derek looking down at his feet a lot. Finally, Derek nodded at something she said, and they hugged. It was brief and awkward, but it was something real. After Derek left, Victoria found me sitting on one of the benches we'd installed together. "He came," she said, sitting beside me with wonder in her voice. "He actually came to see what we created." "What did he say?" I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. "He said he's still hurt and angry, that it's going to take time for him to accept all of this. But he also said that he can see I'm happy in a way I haven't been in years. That the gallery is beautiful and clearly came from people who care about their work and the community. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. He's not ready to have dinner with us or anything like that, but he's willing to try talking to me again. That's a start. Over the next several months, things slowly started shifting like ice melting in spring. The gallery became a success story that local news covered. Victoria's consulting firm landed 3 major projects from clients who cared more about her work than her personal life. Derek started calling his mother once a week. Short conversations at first, but real ones where they actually talked. Philip's divorce settlement was finalized in April. Victoria got enough money to maintain her independence and start her business properly, but not so much that it caused new problems. They'd both agreed to be fair rather than vindictive, which surprised everyone who knew them. One afternoon in May, Victoria and I were looking at brownstones to rent together in a neighborhood halfway between our workplaces. We found a small place with good light and enough space for both of us to work from home. As we were signing the lease, Victoria squeezed my hand tight. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, searching my face. "Moving in together means everyone will know for certain that we're serious about each other." "I'm sure," I said without hesitation. "Are you?" "More sure than I've been about anything in years," she replied with a smile. We moved in together that June when the weather finally got warm. Derek came over for dinner during our second week there. It was awkward at first, all of us trying too hard to act normal and make conversation. But by the end of the night, we were laughing about something stupid on TV, and it felt almost natural. Like maybe we could actually make this work. On the anniversary of that night in the garden pavilion where everything started, I took Victoria back to Derek's family estate. Philip had moved out months ago and the property was being sold, but we still had access. We walked through the same garden where she'd whispered that she wished I was hers exactly 1 year earlier. "A year ago, you said something that changed both of our lives," I told her, stopping in the spot where we'd first really talked. "I know," she said, looking around at the garden with soft eyes. "I couldn't stop thinking about you even then." I got down on one knee on the gravel path and pulled out a simple ring I'd been carrying for weeks. "Will you marry me?" Victoria started crying immediately, covering her mouth with her hands. "Yes, absolutely yes." We got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the gallery we built together. Tyler was my best man, making jokes that actually made people laugh. Derek stood in the front row with tears in his eyes, finally understanding that his mother deserved genuine happiness, even if it looked different than he'd expected. Philip even sent a congratulations card wishing us well, which surprised both of us. Standing with Victoria as my wife, surrounded by the few people who really mattered, I realized we'd built something far more valuable than other people's approval. We'd built an honest life together based on truth rather than comfort. We proved that it's never too late to choose real love over comfortable lies, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be honest about who you really are.